The robbers opened the Federal Reserve vault door but paid no attention to the tons of gold inside. Instead, they pulled out a detonator and several propane tanks. The engineer told Captain Doak that everyone must evacuate immediately. If the propane tanks placed by the robbers inside the vault were to explode, the entire vault would turn into an oven with temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees. Val instantly realized that Elena's goal was to destroy the entire vault. At 2,000 degrees, all the gold inside would be vaporized. Years ago, Elena had destroyed a diamond mine in Gambia using the same method. Clearly, Elena wasn't after the money, she was seeking revenge. Despite the time pressure, Captain Doak finally made the right decision. He ordered the demolition team to blast open the door to the vault. However, when they rushed in, the robbers had already activated the detonator. Sensing the incoming police, the robbers surrendered without resistance, but the countdown on the detonator showed less than a minute and a half, leaving no time to evacuate the hostages in the bank lobby. Val and Captain Doak exchanged glances and, relying on the bomb-defusing knowledge they learned in the academy, nervously pulled the detonator wires. They both breathed a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the hostages above the vault were still under the robbers' control, so Captain Doak ordered a full assault. The police successfully subdued the robbers and rescued all the hostages. It seemed the police had neutralized the crisis. However, given all the effort Elena put into getting the robbers into the vault and setting up the bombs, it couldn't have been this easy to disarm them. Before leaving, the robbers had placed an unknown device, resembling a gold bar, inside the vault. Once everyone had evacuated, a 48-minute countdown appeared on the unknown device. Unaware of this, Captain Doak was busy taking credit in front of the Secretary General. Val confronted Elena, demanding to know her true purpose that day. Elena told Val that all the plans would conclude in 5 days, and by then, everything would become clear. Today's operation was just to force the Balak organization into the open. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Elena also told Val not to always label her as the bad guy. She informed Val that the man who killed Val's mother, long believed dead according to police records, was actually still alive. She wanted to know how Val, who always acted strictly by the law, would handle this when faced with her mother's killer. Elena had already placed the killer's address in Val's pocket. Val, half in disbelief, opened the note and was stunned. Today, Elena's target was the woman in the photo, a judge. The deputy director had already realized this and had sent 2 bodyguards to protect the area. The 2 bodyguards were keeping an eye out when a woman approached them for a chat. Unbeknownst to them, danger was closing in. A masked man with a tranquilizer gun approached, and with 2 quick shots, the bodyguards were knocked out. Then, several masked individuals emerged from a car, wielding a battering ram as they brazenly broke into a house. This woman was Elena's target today. They abducted the judge and drove away. Before leaving, one of the robbers left an envelope in front of the security camera. The police quickly arrived at the judge's home but found no clues at the scene, just a note in the envelope left by Elena. Then, Officer Anthony brought in new information. A prison break had occurred nearby the previous night. Surveillance footage revealed that the escaped convict, Jack, had helped Elena's associates kidnap the judge. It was this judge who had sentenced Jack to prison. Now that he had escaped, was he out for revenge against the judge? The previously baffling kidnapping case finally had a connection. The police soon found the abandoned getaway vehicle, but it had been wiped clean of any evidence. Val quickly realized that the focus wasn't on the car but on its location. Elena luring her to this spot had to serve a purpose, so they discussed the escaped convict, Jack, who broke out last night. According to the information Anthony found, Jack was involved in a murder case. Witnesses testified that Jack had brutally shot a man in the head, leading the judge to sentence Jack to life in prison without the possibility of appeal. Given Elena's methods, Val suspected there might be an issue with Jack's conviction and thought they might uncover something by contacting the eyewitness. She reported this to the deputy director, who was more concerned about the kidnapped judge, as she had once been his first love back in law school. Frustrated, the deputy director confronted Elena. Meanwhile, this was the second bank Elena had targeted. The police had cut the bank's power, but the robbers were using a portable generator to hack into the bank's server, transferring funds from Elena's frozen accounts. The police tech team was monitoring the situation in real time. Based on the failures of previous operations, Captain Doak knew that when the robbers made a move, they were likely preparing an escape plan. Having been outsmarted several times, he decided to take a tougher approach by proposing a hostage exchange to lure the female ringleader of the robbers into the open. Once an opportunity presented itself, he planned to take her out. With the deputy director's approval, he immediately set the plan in motion. He first negotiated with the captured Louis, revealing that the female ringleader inside the bank was Louis's girlfriend. Doak even placed their engagement rings in front of him to assert his dominance. Captain Doak then negotiated with the female ringleader, offering to exchange Louis for the hostages inside the bank. If she refused, Doak threatened to make Louis disappear through extra-legal means. This move caught the robbers off guard, but they quickly devised a counter-strategy. Meanwhile, Elena sat calmly in the secret base, sipping tea, quietly anticipating their performance. The police demanded a hostage exchange at the back door of the bank and meticulously prepared their setup. In the distance, a sniper had already aimed at the exit. Soon, Louis was brought up by the police. The police agreed with the robbers that for every hostage released, Louis could take one step forward. At the same time, the sniper maintained a constant aim, targeting the female ringleader of the robbers. The plan was to take her out as soon as she appeared. To prevent any police trickery, the female ringleader exchanged a code word with Louis before the exchange began. As the hostages were released one by one, Louis moved closer and closer to the bank's back door. Amidst the chaos, Louis suddenly dashed back into the bank. Everyone found it strange that despite the police firing at Louis and the hostages, no one was harmed. Without time to think, the police quickly evacuated the hostages and stormed inside, only to find that the robbers had escaped through a tunnel. Captain Doak's mind was racing, and when he pulled out Louis's ring, he realized the ring was missing. It seemed the police had been outsmarted once again, but the tables were about to turn. Later, Louis and his girlfriend were celebrating their successful escape, unaware that Captain Doak was standing right behind them. It turned out that during the hostage exchange, the police had deliberately missed their shots because they were using blanks. They wanted to capture the robbers alive. Doak had intentionally let Louis steal the ring, which had a tracker implanted inside, allowing them to locate and capture the robbers. Meanwhile, Val was still investigating the judge's kidnapping case and discovered the armed fugitive who had taken the judge. The fugitive told her that years ago, this place used to be a small grocery store. Val recalled Elena's note, which mentioned this very store, where 25 witnesses had testified that they saw the fugitive commit murder from a rooftop across the street. The fugitive asked Val to look out the window, where she realized that the rooftop couldn't be seen from this location. It was clear that the fugitive had been framed, and the kidnapped judge had sentenced him to life imprisonment. After hearing the judge's testimony, the fugitive seemed to find some peace before he jumped out the window with the judge in his arms. Fortunately, there was an external balcony outside, but the fugitive disappeared. Back at the base, Val quickly investigated the 25 witnesses, all of whom were connected to the Balak organization. The fugitive had been framed after discovering a murder committed by the Balak organization, and the judge was a member of Balak. She had also participated in the massacre of Elena's family. Faced with irrefutable evidence, the judge confessed her guilt. The crimes of the 6 people on Elena's revenge list had been fully exposed, but Val couldn't find peace back home. She remembered the address Elena had left behind, the one she said belonged to the man who had killed Val's mother and was still alive. Following the address, Val found the man, who had changed his name and identity. During their conversation, a delivery man handed over a pack of cigarettes. Val knew her mother's killer was right in front of her but was helpless. Though in deep pain, she decided to gather evidence and bring him to justice through the legal system. She had just taken a few steps when the man, who had taken a puff of his cigarette, suddenly collapsed from poisoning. The delivery man had laced the cigarette with poison. It was clearly one of Elena's people who had done it. Val rushed back to the base, where Elena was already in her pajamas. Val asked Elena if she had called her there just to witness her mother's killer die. Elena replied that now Val could finally get a good night's sleep. As they talked, the lights suddenly went out. Judging by Elena's expression, the power outage wasn't her doing. Outside the secret base, a man activated a mysterious device, plunging the entire base into darkness. A killer armed with 2 military knives infiltrated the base, but fortunately, an old generator provided a weak emergency power supply. A faint red glow lit up the base, and Val suspected this was another one of Elena's plans. But Elena, with a serious look, said, "It wasn't me, we're in big trouble." A SWAT officer informed the deputy director that the power system had been hit by an EMP, and even the radios were dead. The deputy director immediately ordered the SWAT team to heighten security, but only 7 SWAT officers were on duty at the base due to a shift change. Even worse, both Val and the deputy director had locked their guns in the base's control room. The deputy director decided to retrieve the guns and left Val behind to keep an eye on Elena. Outside, a patrolling SWAT officer noticed something unusual. approached with his gun drawn, but was swiftly and silently eliminated by the killer. Val locked Elena up in the base, believing that Elena's next target might be the faceless man in the photo. Elena generously admitted that the man, codenamed Ghost, was a CIA assassin who had participated in the massacre of her family. She said there was a plan targeting him today, but the power outage wasn't part of it. Elena guessed that as her revenge plan progressed and her accomplices were picked off one by one, Ghost had grown restless and decided to strike first by coming to the base. If an outside attack was indeed happening, Elena requested to change into clothes more suitable for action. Val found the deputy director and asked about Ghost. The deputy director confirmed that Ghost had defected 2 years ago, while what Elena said might be true. He was more inclined to believe it was a trick to escape. He then remembered Elena's 2 henchmen, who were also locked up in the dungeon. The EMP might have disabled the electronic locks. Elena's associates, Louis and his girlfriend, seemed to notice the fluctuating lights and sensed that the electronic lock might be compromised. If they timed it right, they might be able to escape. At that moment, the deputy director arrived. Seeing that the door lock was secure, the deputy director felt reassured and left. But shortly after he walked away, Louis's door unexpectedly opened. He quickly tried to help open his girlfriend's door. However, a noise from around the corner caught his attention, prompting him to check it out immediately. His anxious girlfriend desperately shook the door, and fortunately, as the lights flickered, the door opened. But when she hurriedly ran to the corner, she found Louis barely clinging to life. The FBI prison had been attacked, and the deputy director's only weapon for self-defense was an iron rod. Turning a corner, he encountered 2 injured prisoners. The deputy director had no choice but to take them to the center of the base, as it was the safest place at the moment. After a professional assessment, the deputy director discovered that Louis had a pneumothorax due to his injuries, and he rushed off to get medical supplies. Louis's girlfriend, however, suspected a trap, thinking that after all, he was a cop and they were bank robbers. Val explained that even though they were prisoners, it was still the police's duty to protect them. The girlfriend remained skeptical of his medical skills. Val reassured her, saying that the deputy director wouldn't have reached his position without being exceptional. He was once a professional medic in the Marine Corps. During their conversation, the deputy director arrived with a medical kit and began treating Louis. Elena realized they couldn't just sit and wait, especially with the enemy closing in and their guns locked away, with no proper weapons to fight back. The deputy director recalled that there was an old storage room in the basement with a physical lock. However, going alone was too dangerous, so he asked Val to take someone and retrieve some weapons. Reluctantly, Val unlocked Elena's handcuffs but was cautious and cuffed Elena's hands to her own. When they reached the storage room, they found it had been abandoned for years, and there were no proper weapons, just a rusty dagger and a corroded handgun. Elena, with her years of arms dealing experience, warned Val that firing the gun would likely blow her hand off. Fortunately, they found an old landmine that Elena deemed somewhat usable. They also found the base's blueprint, which revealed a passage leading directly to the center of the base. Back at the bunker, Val suspected the assassin might enter through the ventilation ducts. With no weapons, they debated evacuating immediately, but Elena suggested using the enemy's movements against them. Elena devised a plan, and the deputy director moved Louis to a safer location. Not long after, a noise echoed through the ventilation ducts. The assassin, known as Ghost, had indeed entered through them, only to be met by Elena, who was waiting with her foot on the landmine. Val faced off against the assassin with the old gun. Just as Ghost was about to reveal crucial information, Elena made a sudden move, diving behind a steel table for cover. However, there was an awkward moment when the old landmine didn't explode. The assassin looked puzzled as he took a few steps forward, unable to believe that these 2 high-profile targets were planning to hide behind a table with a gun pointed at him. But in the next instant, the aged mine finally detonated with a delayed explosion. Though blasted away, the assassin remained formidable. Val seized the moment and struck him with a chair. As the assassin struggled to regain his senses, Elena moved in from behind and used the handcuff chain to choke him. Together, they managed to subdue him. Just as this crisis was resolved, trouble was brewing at the prison where Elena's husband was being held. In 2018, in Rio de Janeiro, Elena had just given birth to her daughter. As a new mother, she had no idea how to be a good parent. The baby's relentless crying nearly drove her to the brink, and with her husband absent, Elena was left with only loneliness and despair. That's when a woman came into her life and saved her. This woman patiently guided her, sharing parenting advice from her own experience. After weeks of bonding, they became inseparable friends. She helped Elena through that difficult time, and Elena, in turn, gifted her a precious family heirloom, a ring passed down from her mother. But then, a call from her husband shattered the seemingly peaceful life. He warned her that the friend in front of her was using a false name and cautioned Elena to be careful, saying he would return soon. Sergei did come back not long after, and by then, Natalia was calmly reading a book at Elena's home. Their conversation was civil, but there was an underlying tension. Natalia warned Sergei not to act rashly, threatening that if she didn't leave the house safely, a dozen machine guns outside would turn it into a war zone. In the midst of the conversation, Elena burst in with a gun, demanding to know who Natalia worked for. Natalia admitted that her mission was to wait for Sergei's return and take them both down, but she hadn't expected Sergei to be aware of her plan. In the end, they reached a stalemate, and Natalia had to leave. Elena's rage was overwhelming. She had trusted someone, only to endanger her family. The sound of the prison alarm snapped Sergei out of his memories. A fire had broken out in Block B of the prison, and all inmates were being evacuated to the cafeteria. Far from the fire, the acting warden informed them that the fire department was on its way. But the restless prisoners were not easily placated. With someone stirring up trouble, a riot broke out. One inmate, armed with a sharpened toothbrush, charged straight at Sergei. It turned out he had a grudge against Elena's husband and saw this as an opportunity to eliminate him. Luckily, Val's husband intervened in time but accidentally killed the attacker. Back at the base, Val and Elena had just dealt with the SWAT team that had arrived late. Although they managed to capture the CIA assassin, Elena was still handcuffed in the living quarters. Owen, having accidentally killed a prisoner, fell into despair because, according to Elena's plan, they were supposed to escape from prison in 3 days, but now he was placed in solitary confinement. At that moment, the warden was on the phone, and on the other end was Mrs. Belloc, who was actually Natalia from the past. It was clear that they were also executing a plan against Elena, causing Elena's control over everything to begin to waver. The repeated failures of operations caused the White House to almost lose faith in the FBI. The White House Chief of Staff personally met with Captain Doak, highly praising his leadership during the rescue operation at the Federal Reserve. As the second in command at the White House, the Chief of Staff hinted that the current FBI director was about to be removed and hinted at promoting Captain Doak as the next FBI director. The sudden good news made Captain Doak overjoyed, but before he could fully celebrate, the Chief of Staff suddenly collapsed, and the nearby bodyguards also fell unconscious. Immediately, Captain Doak began to feel his limbs weaken. Doak helplessly watched as two masked men burst in and abducted the Chief of Staff. When the Chief of Staff woke up, he found himself tied up in a small confined space, with the surveillance footage directly sent to the President of the United States. The President personally called the FBI director, demanding that the situation be resolved quickly. However, as soon as the video call ended, the small space where the Chief of Staff was held began to slowly fill with gold-colored paint. An anxious Val went to find Elena. The police quickly investigated the scene and discovered that the robbers had used a gas hidden in a vase to knock out their victims. By carefully reviewing the surveillance footage outside the door, the sharp-eyed Val quickly identified a suspicious vehicle used to deliver flowers. The police then traced the target vehicle, but the exterior of the truck had been thoroughly cleaned. However, the residue of clay inside the truck, which stood out, caught Val's attention. Val believed this might be a clue left by Elena and arranged for Anthony to send it to the lab for analysis. Meanwhile, an online video was causing an uproar on the internet. A blogger, claiming to be a skeptic, revealed to the public that mainstream media had been covering up the truth about Elena's bank heist. According to his investigation, several government officials who were arrested within a week for various crimes had all been employed by the White House 10 years ago. In just 1 hour, this brief video reached 2 million views, shifting public opinion in favor of Elena, with support for her growing rapidly. As time passed, the gold-colored paint continued to rise, and things took a turn for the worse as the location of the secret base where Elena was being held was somehow leaked, leading to a large number of civilians gathering at the site. The FBI director became flustered and ordered Val to quickly identify the video's uploader. Val had just received the lab report, which indicated that the clay found in the suspect's vehicle came from a clay factory located 50 kilometers away. As time continued to pass, the golden paint continued to rise, putting the Chief of Staff's life in grave danger. By the time Val and Doak arrived at the scene, it was already too late. The White House Chief of Staff was trapped in a small space rapidly filling with golden paint. When the police arrived, the Chief of Staff was completely submerged. Captain Doak, in a panic, tried to break the valve open with brute force. However, Val noticed that the pipe had rusted with age, and she quickly found a steel pipe. After several attempts, she managed to pry the pipe open. As the gold-colored paint flowed out, the water level inside the space gradually dropped, revealing the woman's head. With a sudden fit of coughing, the chief of staff surprisingly regained consciousness. However, just as this news came in, Officer Anthony uncovered information about the clay mine linked to the crime. It turned out that the land was owned by none other than the kidnapped chief of staff. Val was puzzled as to why Elena had targeted the chief of staff, but she told her that Elena's reason for targeting her might be the same as why she had targeted Val. She explained that Elena liked to recruit intelligent and capable individuals for her own use, and she also reminded Val that owning oil land wasn't illegal, cautioning her not to investigate the wrong angle. She also warned Val to be mindful of her attitude when speaking with people from the White House. The police quickly tracked down the blogger who had posted the video. At the same time, this person was rallying people to gather outside the Federal Reserve Bank. Among the crowd, a black-clad woman immediately recognized the blogger. However, it turned out that this person was just an ordinary journalist seeking attention, not someone connected to Elena. Meanwhile, as the countdown inside the vault ended, the mysterious device began releasing an unknown gas. Soon after, it started raining inside the vault. The vault's sprinkler system had been activated, and the fire department rushed to the scene. Val and Doak also arrived, but what they saw next shocked everyone. The 6,000 tons of gold inside the vault had melted into a pile of sludge. What was even more surprising was that the fire department told them that the substance released by the device wasn't some sort of acid, but just plain water. Val picked up an intact gold bar and smashed it against the ground. The Federal Reserve's 6,000 tons of gold had vanished, replaced by clay supplied by the White House Chief of Staff. Elena's orchestrated reign had exposed everything. The President of the United States was personally trying to calm the enraged public. Val carefully reviewed all the events and was shocked to discover that, although all the people in the photos had been punished, the person who took the photo must have also been in the room. Anthony then revealed to Val that on the day of the explosion at Elena's family's wedding years ago, the person who took the photo couldn't have been the chief of staff. Upon investigation, it was found that the chief of staff was serving as a colonel in a military unit out of town at the time. When they checked the log of who entered and exited the White House that day, the name of a relatively junior senator caught their attention. If the person who took the photo years ago was indeed that senator, then the implications would be catastrophic for the country, because that once junior senator had since climbed the ranks and had now become the President of the United States. Their theory was confirmed by the Chief of Staff. Based on the Chief of Staff's reaction, Val concluded that he hadn't known about the explosion at Elena's wedding. What surprised Val even more was that the funds used to purchase the clay mine came from the President's sponsorship. This also means that the production of the 6,000 tons of fake gold is backed by none other than the current president. Val realized once again that Elena might be right. Anthony, on the other hand, recognized that having uncovered such a massive conspiracy, their safety might be at risk. Val reassured him that as long as no one knows the president is a suspect, they are relatively safe. As long as the news of the gold heist is kept under wraps by the authorities, it won't cause public panic for the time being. Suddenly, the reporter who posted the video interrupted them, wanting to know what happened when a group of firefighters rushed into the bank. Val quickly tried to calm the crowd, but as she walked away, a passing firefighter picked up a phone from the ground and discreetly handed it to the reporter. Upon checking the phone, the reporter found a video of the gold melting in the vault. Val went to the FBI director to report the seriousness of the situation. The always upright director listened carefully. A year and a half ago, when Elena was preparing her revenge plan and knew that danger lurked everywhere, she sent her 4-year-old daughter to a remote farm in upstate New York. However, the police had previously tracked down the farm through decoded messages sent to Elena and had already put the place under surveillance. In a critical situation, they could use Elena's daughter to threaten her. Clearly, the situation had reached that critical point, so Val confronted Elena. Val calmly told Elena about their current predicament. The police had located Elena's daughter and might use her as leverage. This clearly hit Elena's bottom line. At that moment, their conversation was interrupted by a knock. The reporter had already uploaded the video of the gold theft online, causing an uproar. A large crowd gathered outside the Federal Reserve Bank, demanding the government reveal the truth. The president also made a personal appearance to oversee the investigation of the gold theft. He had lost faith in the FBI director, who had been upright but repeatedly failed. He handed control over to the sycophantic Captain Doak, brimming with confidence in his actions. The president's arrival made Val realize the danger, and she anxiously told Elena to stop playing games as there was no time left. Elena found Val's concern amusing, saying that the current situation might lead to the deaths of everyone involved. If the president decided to kill Elena, all of Elena's plans would turn to dust. Val felt that Elena's team had been almost entirely captured and that Elena was running out of options, but Elena just laughed. Elena then told Val that she had something the president feared. Elena directly mentioned to Val that the conspiracy theorist who posted the video had something significant, a Russian nesting doll with the truth she needed. Before Val could ask further, Secret Service agents burst in, holding documents. Agent Gallo informed Val that the Secret Service had fully taken over the secret base. He then cuffed Elena. As Val was leaving, Elena reminded her that she might not survive until nightfall, urging Val to make the most of the time left. Elena was hooded, but she said something thought-provoking before being taken away. Agent Gallo then pulled out a box containing a neural substitute, also known as truth serum. Even with the hood on, Elena guessed their intentions. Val wasted no time and immediately headed to the conspiracy theorist's residence with Anthony. But when they arrived, they discovered that the conspiracy theorist had already been silenced. Val noticed the theorist's car, and Anthony traced its recent movements using the license plate. They found the theorist's wife in a hidden room filled with information on the Balak organization. In this room, Val uncovered details about a 2015 traffic accident that seemed like a simple accident but had directly led to a minor senator becoming the current president. The person who died in that accident had been another presidential candidate. Val instantly realized that the Russian nesting doll likely contained evidence of the president's involvement in illegal activities and possibly murder. Elena was strapped to a chair, awaiting brutal interrogation. The president explained that the explosion at Elena's family wedding years ago was just business and straightforwardly demanded that Elena hand over the Russian nesting doll containing evidence of the president's dark past. Elena found him laughable, noting that Mrs. Balak was meticulous in her dealings, always keeping compromising evidence on everyone she worked with. Similarly, when dealing with the president in shady transactions, she kept incriminating evidence. She stored each person's secrets in a small Russian nesting doll. Ironically, before Elena stole the evidence from the Balak family, the president hadn't even known such a thing existed. Elena was unimpressed with the president's intelligence network. In response, the president injected her with the truth serum, hoping to force a confession, but he underestimated Elena's willpower. The president knew that Elena sought revenge because he had been involved in the bombing at her wedding, which had wiped out 108 members of her family. He told Elena that in the three-way power struggle back then, her family lost because her grandmother was too greedy. Elena's family was the loser in that conflict. In Elena's view, the president was merely a puppet used by the Balak family. As they spoke, neither of them noticed that Elena had managed to loosen her restraints, but she was soon injected with another dose of the serum, this time into her leg. The president kindly warned her that an overdose might kill her before she could reveal the truth. The double dose of the serum caused Elena's consciousness to begin fading. Meanwhile, Captain Doak was investigating the whereabouts of the gold, and technicians discovered that the vault surveillance system had been repaired 3 times in the past year and a half. The robbers exploited the security gap during the maintenance period to hack into the surveillance system and secretly swap out the gold in the vault. As for the whereabouts of the gold, it remains unknown. At this moment, Elena's consciousness began to blur, and the intense burning sensation in her body caused her immense pain. In her daze, she hummed a tune as if she could see her daughter. The president then took out another dose of the substitute serum, which led to the first and only time that the ever-dominant Elena begged for mercy. Elena's willpower finally collapsed, and she revealed the fate of the Russian nesting doll. She disclosed that the doll containing the secrets was in a safety deposit box at the Republican Bank of New York, one of the 2 banks currently controlled by Elena's people. Upon hearing this, the president immediately ordered the Secret Service agents to take the bank. When asked what to do with Elena, the president casually said, "Kill her." The Secret Service launched an operation on the bank, and Val also received the news. She believed that no matter how severe the torture, Elena would withstand it, because even in death, Elena would never yield to the president. Elena still controlled 2 banks, and unless she was willing to give up one, the police would not be able to breach them. Since Elena had directed the Secret Service to one of the banks, Val reasoned that the real evidence must be in the other bank. And indeed, she was right. When the Secret Service stormed the bank, the robbers inside offered no resistance, and as expected, the nesting doll inside the vault was empty. When Val arrived at the other bank, the robbers had already prepared for her arrival. Their mission was simply to wait for Val to retrieve it, and once the task was completed, they surrendered peacefully. Val secretly met with the now powerless FBI director and viewed the USB drive inside the doll. The video clearly recorded a conversation from years ago, showing the president conspiring with the Balak family to assassinate a rival presidential candidate, thus securing his own rise to power. The FBI director urged Val to go into hiding, as they could not turn the evidence over to the president. At this point, their shared goal was to rescue Elena, but they were unaware that the president, upon learning everything, angrily smashed his coffee cup and ordered Elena to be buried alive immediately. Elena was taken to the countryside, marking the first time in a week that she had left her secret detention base. The infamous Elena, who had shaken all of New York, was buried alive in a coffin. As the coffin was slowly covered with dirt, Elena was left with nothing but endless terror. However, 2 minutes earlier, Elena had slyly stolen a multi-tool flashlight from the pocket of a Secret Service agent. As the highly trained agent working for the president, it was impossible that he didn't notice, implying that this agent was one of Elena's people. Ironically, Captain Doak had previously discovered a clue. While the technician was analyzing the vault's entry records, this agent had repeatedly entered the vault by cloning the retinal scan of a board member. Before Doak could react, the arriving Secret Service agents interrupted him. The Secret Service, armed with the president's orders, forcibly took over the FBI investigation, unplugging the monitors showing their findings and demanding all reports related to Elena's case. The FBI was effectively sidelined. If Captain Doak had reported this anomaly to the president, it could have brought down Elena. However, the foolish Doak lacked the intellect to do so, while the FBI director, recognizing the oddities, chose to remain silent. At this point, he had already allied himself with Elena because he stood for justice. It seemed that everything was once again under Elena's control, but then new complications arose in the prison. Val's husband, Owen, was a crucial part of Elena's plan. According to the established plan, Owen and Elena's husband would escape from prison the next day, but at this moment, Owen was secretly sending messages to the outside, and the recipient was not Elena but her archenemy, Mrs. Balak. Clearly, Owen had betrayed her. Not long after Elena was buried alive, her mercenaries located her through the tracker embedded in her personal emblem. With a sharp gasp, Elena woke up, ready to continue her unfinished plan. Elena's first priority was to find her daughter, as she was her only weakness. However, the FBI had already placed her daughter under 24-hour surveillance. On the president's orders, Captain Doak was sent to capture Elena's 4-year-old daughter, but when they threw a flashbang and stormed the location, they found that they had been tricked. Elena had already moved her daughter through a tunnel. After a brief moment of tenderness, Elena drove away with her daughter, and by the time Captain Doak followed the tunnel, it was too late. Returning empty-handed, Captain Doak reported the situation to the president, only to be harshly reprimanded. He was then ordered to retrieve the Russian nesting doll from Val. Completely engrossed in the pursuit of power, Captain Doak was unaware that the man standing at the pinnacle of power, the President of the United States, was utterly subservient to the Balak family. When the president returned to his office, the mysterious Mrs. Balak was already there, waiting with a knife in hand. Mrs. Balak was furious, having just lost a truckload of gold. According to their long-standing plan, the Balak organization had supported the president's rise to power, and in return, the president helped them steal gold from the Federal Reserve. They melted the gold down and had prison laborers fashion it into inconspicuous buttons. Today, they were preparing to move the 4 truckloads of gold that had been fully processed. Elena had been preparing for this for years. A year and a half ago, she planted her husband Sergei in the prison to monitor their every move. Elena's people marked the last truck in advance. Sergei and Owen found the equipment and guns hidden by Elena under the truck. They hid beneath the truck, successfully sneaking out, but narrowly missed meeting Val. When Val learned of the prison break, she also discovered that Elena's husband Sergei was still alive, and she immediately began tracking the vehicle's location. Having successfully escaped, Sergei and Owen waited until the truck driver stopped for a break, then killed him and took control of the truck. At the fork in the road, they successfully separated from the convoy, and Val and Anthony tracked the vehicle's path to the dock. After taking down the members of the Balak organization, the SWAT team finally arrived and successfully seized 3 truckloads of gold. However, since the U.S. government is merely a puppet of the Balak family, Mrs. Balak is not worried about the gold being reclaimed by the government, knowing it will eventually return to the Balak family. At this moment, Mrs. Balak is truly concerned about the truckload of gold that Elena has stolen. Sergei, with the gold in tow, arrived at the church and successfully reunited with Elena. In front of her beloved husband, Elena was as happy as a child. But before they could share a tender moment, Val, who had gotten wind of their location, interrupted them. By now, Val no longer trusted Elena. She felt used by Elena. She believed that Elena's talk of friendship and righteousness were all lies. And in the end, Elena's ultimate goal was the gold. She couldn't accept this version of Elena. But Elena pointed her gun at Owen. It turns out that Elena had long uncovered Owen's true identity as a CIA agent. Elena then revealed the whole truth of the events. Years ago, when Elena was planning her revenge, she discovered Owen's undercover status. Through Owen, she accidentally discovered Val. And since her plan was still in its early stages and she needed capable people, she brought Val into it. Elena told Val that although the ultimate goal was different, they had successfully reshuffled the US government and fought corruption. To make amends to Val, Elena handed her a hollow Russian nesting doll as compensation. It turns out that when Elena stole the nesting doll from the Balak organization years ago, it wasn't just the one containing the president's secrets. She also took many dolls containing crucial information about various powerful factions. For Val, who had always yearned to fight crime, this was the perfect gift. As for where the items were hidden, Elena did not disclose the location. Under heavy gunfire, Val could only watch as Elena walked away. Elena instructed her subordinates to secure the stolen gold, while she and her husband prepared to head to the airport. They believed that the three of them would never have to be separated again. Confident in her perfect plan, Elena let her guard down this time. Roadblocks spiked the tires, forcing Elena's car to stop. Several armed members of the Balak family surrounded them. Her husband Sergei, despite his skill, was outnumbered and eventually overpowered. Then Mrs. Balak arrived, and her men snatched Elena's daughter. During the struggle, Elena was also shot. Mrs. Balak feigned kindness as she comforted the little girl and explained the deep-rooted conflict between the Elena family and the Balak organization. When Elena was a child, her car was bombed while driving with her father. Though she narrowly escaped death, they were chased down by a father and daughter, forcing Elena to fight back. The man Elena killed with a throwing knife was Mrs. Balak's father, and the woman whose neck was snapped was Mrs. Balak's sister. When the Balak organization orchestrated the church bombing that wiped out Elena's family, Mrs. Balak's revenge was complete. At this moment, she only wanted to reclaim the truckload of gold Elena had stolen and the Russian nesting dolls that were crucial to her family. Severely wounded, Elena staggered as she tried to chase after her beloved daughter, forgetting about her unconscious husband in the car. As the men left, they casually tossed a timed explosive into the car. With a deafening explosion, Elena lost nearly everything. Meanwhile, the FBI was unable to bring down the president using the incriminating video evidence. Somehow, Captain Doak had managed to steal the USB drive containing the president's crimes, but instead of destroying it as ordered by the president, Captain Doak kept it for himself with ulterior motives. His ambitious plan was to use it to blackmail the president. The FBI director, informed by Anthony's report, had already learned of this. The cunning director chose to remain silent because the FBI was currently too weak to confront the president and the powerful Balak family. The more chaotic the situation, the more advantageous it was for him. Val looked at her husband, who she once loved dearly, now a man of such complex identity, and he felt like a stranger to her. She could not accept her husband's years of deception, and when he asked for reconciliation, Val resolutely refused. She returned to the secret base where Elena once stayed, a place now lifeless without her. Val sat in Elena's chair, lost in memories of her time with Elena, feeling a mix of longing and nostalgia. As she stared at Elena's dress, lost in thought, she had no idea how helpless and desperate Elena was at that very moment. A sudden, urgent phone call snapped her out of her reverie.
I need your help.
I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.